No.
Listen. Hold on.
Well, Amy got drilled. I drilled Amy.
That sounds really dirty.
Never did look past that rain. You looking out a wet window pane. Too many raindrops hitting. Never did look past that rain. But there's a rainbow in it. Trust yourself and get with it. Stuck in hell isn't living. Stick to the movement. This isn't you. Just let the past burn out. It's finished. Goodbye.
All right, so right now I'm working on getting the wiring in so I can start insulating and finishing the interior. Got to get all the wire run through the walls first. So I got the exterior is mostly done. It's actually sitting on the trailer frame right now. And yeah, it's pretty cloudy out. We're expecting some heavy rains today. But I actually, if I can keep the rain out from inside here, I might actually be able to work even with a little bit of rain. So anyway, I'll show what we got going on so far. All right, so let's see. I don't know if you can see that, but this is... All right, so I changed the way I did the electrical. The original plan was to put the battery in the back and run all the wire back there. I was going to put a fuse panel back there and then distribute the power from there. I didn't like the way that was turning out. It seemed kind of, I don't know, I just didn't like the way it was turning out. So I decided instead, I still put the battery in the back under the bed in the same place, but instead I ran a large 8-gauge wire up to a fuse panel that sits right underneath the bed by the door right here. And the reason I did that is because I've got the switch here. The fan is right basically above where the camera is right now. So it just made it a lot easier to bring all the, since I have all the switch down here and the fan up there, it made it more sense to put the fuse panel up here and distribute the power from here. So I think it's less runs through the wall and stuff like that, because I basically just have one run through the wall and then everything goes out from there. I didn't really get any footage of me doing that. So, but I do have a little video explaining it and kind of showing the wire in the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you now. And then when we come back from that, I have another change that I recently made that I want to talk about. Basically, I converted from an AGM battery to a lithium battery. And that took a bunch of more changes. So I'll talk about that when we get back. So right now, let's cue the video. All right, so there's the wiring. That was a lot of work. So I got all that. That's ceiling. That's the ceiling wiring. Goes all the way back, down. Got a couple of lights in the back there. I don't know if you can see that. And go down here. So the battery is going to go down there, and then the power comes around, up, across to here, and there's going to be a breaker box down there, which is by the door. So that's where the breaker box is going to be. Power will come in there and get distributed from there. So there's the big mess of lights for the light switch area. Going to get lots of lights. So yeah, now it's time to start insulating. Alright, so that was a quick recap of the wire in the walls and how the wires all run through the walls. I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick recap of all the power that's in here. The trailer's actually done at this point. So I'll be able to really show you all the electrical and how it works in here now. All right. All right, so back there underneath the bed in that corner is where the battery is mounted. All the power is run through the wall, and I showed you that, and it comes up to underneath here where, I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, I got a fuse panel right there. So I've got 8-gauge wire that comes from the battery up to the fuse panel. Then all the power is distributed out from there. Everything's fused. And so it comes up, for example, the lights come up here. The power for the lights come up here. I've got all the lighting in here is on a switch. The reason I did that, so really quick, back there I've got 2 reading lights. So I've got one there and one over there. All right. And then up here, right underneath here, I've got a little vanity light. So all of the lighting comes into this and is switched. The reason I did that is this allows me to turn off all the lights right here. If a light gets switched on back there, I don't have to crawl across the bed to turn it off when I pack up. I just make sure all the lights are switched off. Then in the ceiling, I've got 6 puck lights mounted up there. And those are actually on a dimmer switch right here, so I can control the mood. But then they also, at the same time, they also have their own switch right here. See that? So I can set the dim and then just switch it off and on with the main switch. And then this one over here is for the porch light that's outside. So that's all the lighting. That covers all the lighting in here. It's actually plenty of lighting. All right, and then I also I've got one up here. This here is a USB charger. It's a 4.8, so it has 2.4 amps for each port. I got 2 ports there. And then I've got another one back there in that corner. Now, I don't know if I like these USB chargers as much because, as you can see, you have to turn it on in order to actually make it work. And that can be a little annoying at night to have that blue light turned on. So I may change these out to just a standard outlet that doesn't have the blue light. All right, and then up in the ceiling, I've got a max air fan. So that helps keep things cooled off in here. Underneath here, so you might see this plug here. These are called SAE plugs. I think they're common on motorcycle. They're a nice 12-volt plug. They use this type of an outlet. This here is actually a cigarette adapter, so I can plug just anything with a regular cigarette lighter into there. And then this here just plugs in here, and I got my power. So I got one here, one out here on the side of the trailer, and then up here my porch light, I used one to actually for a plug for my porch light. That way, if I ever need to change this light out for any reason, it's very easy. I just unplug it and replace it if I need to. All right, and then one more thing. Right here, this here's it's just a 500 watt pure sine wave inverter. I don't actually have it wired up. I haven't decided if I want to plug it into the fuse panel or just run its own wire all the way back to the battery. I'm kind of leaning towards hooking it up direct to the battery. But right now, I haven't really been using it. I don't really have anything where I need it. So I could just plug it in with the cigarette lighter if I wanted to. Of course, that does limit the amount of watts I can get out of it. So, but that's got to get hooked up next sometime. So, one more thing right here. This here is my battery monitor. I don't know how accurate it is, but it gives me an approximation about how much battery I have left, and whatever. So it's just nice to have one of those. Gives you an idea about how much charge you have in your battery. All right, so originally I'd put an AGM battery in here, and that was mounted under the bed in the corner. And then the way I charged it, I've got a 100-watt solar panel that I would just plug in, or I actually just used the alligator clips, and I would just alligator clip it onto the battery and set up the charger. I didn't want my solar panels on the roof because then in order to use your solar panels, you're stuck parking in the sun. And you know, in Arizona, it's nice to put your trailer in the shade. And then I can just put my solar panels wherever they need to go to get maximum sunlight. So I kept those portable. So I've got my 100-watt solar panel that charged the AGM battery, and then I just wired the truck. I've got a 7-pin wire for the trailer lights, which has your power lead for the truck, and that'll charge your battery. It doesn't give it a huge charge, but it'll keep it charged up, and if you're on the road for a while, it'll even fill it back up if it's not too dead. So that actually worked out pretty good for a weekend trip. But I decided that I wanted something a little bit more robust, something where I could you know, go on a nice long trip and not have to worry too much about power. So I will show you that now. All right, so originally I had this AGM battery in there. It's a 110 amp hour AGM Mighty Max battery. So that was my original battery. What I did is I replaced it with this here. See if you can see that. HSQT, I think is the brand. It's actually a subsidiary, I think, of Renogy. That's kind of what I've heard. I don't know, but I think it's a subsidiary. I think it's owned by Renogy anyway. So anyway, it's a 100 amp lithium ion battery. Now you might be asking, why would I go from 110 amp to 100 amp? Well, the reason is because with a lead acid battery, you only have about 30 to 40, might be able to get 50% capacity out of that, power out of that battery. So realistically, with that 110 amp, I'm only getting about maybe 50 amps, which is, I don't know, maybe 500 or 600 watts of power is all I'm going to get out of that before it's going to need to be charged up. With a lithium battery, you actually can get about 100% of that battery capacity. So 100 amp lithium is going to give you almost a true 100 amps. So I'm going from about 500 to 600 watts to 1200 watts of available power. Basically a lithium battery gives you about 2 to 2.5 times the capacity, usable capacity, of a lead acid battery of equal amperage. So the 100 amp lithium gives me twice the power. So that's why I went with the lithium battery. But of course, with the lithium battery comes a little bit different charging requirements. So I had to change some of that out. One of them is the solar panel I'm using. The charge controller was just a PWM, a really cheap charge controller, and it actually didn't have a lithium setting on it. So I had to change out my charge controller, which isn't bad because I ended up going with an MPP charge controller, which is a much more efficient charge controller. So I put in a new MPPT charge controller, and I mounted it. I went ahead and mounted it. I don't know if you can see that way back here. Here, I actually got a light under here too. That's better. Yeah, so I got a light mounted under here. Anyway, so that's the charge controller. It didn't change much. I just wired that up and I mounted it in here. So I've got this cable here which plugs into my solar panel, and I plug it in here. So my solar panel plugs in here. That gives me my solar power, goes in, wired it into comes right through this hole right here, the wire, goes into my charge controller there, and then comes out of the charge controller, and I think it's these cables here, if I can, come on, these cables here, and then it's got a 30 amp fuse on it, and those just wire right up to the battery. And then I went ahead and put it on a switch right here so I can actually turn off the charge controller. Otherwise the charge controller is on all the time. So this way I can turn everything off when I'm parked and not using it. So that took care of my solar power. And then, so the other thing is that you can't run, you don't want to run your 7-pin wire direct into your AGM battery or your lithium battery, because the charge requirements on a lithium are different because it has a lower capacity. And so if you wire your alternator, which is basically what you're doing when you plug it into the 7-pin, if you plug your lithium directly into that alternator, you can actually fry your alternator. And in my Dodge, a new alternator is like $250 or something like that. So I definitely don't want to fry that alternator. So what I did for that solution, so I went with the Renogy brand 20 amp DC to DC charger. That's basically what that is it's just a regular charger. Works just like a standard charger would work, but instead of getting its power from a 120 volt outlet, you plug it directly into your truck battery, and then the truck battery / alternator provides the input power, and then you wire it directly to the battery, and that charges the what they call the house battery, or my lithium battery in here. And that's what that does is it isolates the starter battery and your alternator from your lithium battery and gives you a proper charge configuration to charge your lithium battery, and protects your alternator in the process. Now, one thing about the DC to DC charger is I got to get power from the truck back to the charger, which you want the charger mounted as close to your battery as you can get. That's the most efficient way to do it. So that's why my DC to DC charger is mounted in the back of the trailer here. But battery for my truck, the starter battery, is up here in the front of the truck. So I got about 20 feet of truck I got to go through, and then about 15 feet of trailer. So in order to do that, looking at wire calculations, I needed a 4-gauge wire. So the way how I got a 4-gauge wire is I actually used I bought two 20-foot jumper cables. They're 20 feet long each, which was just barely enough to go from the front of the truck, ran it down the frame rail, down here, and then it comes right back here. So back here you've got your 7-pin for the trailer lighting, and then this is called a Anderson plug, and that's what you plug the charge wire. That's a charge wire that you're going to plug the DC charger into. All right, so that takes care of the truck side. And I did put a 30 amp fuse. You definitely want a big heavy duty fuse up there protecting that wire, because if you get a short in that wire, you could start a fire. So you want that fuse to blow if there's a short. So it's got a 30 amp fuse up here. It's all wired into the battery. Then I got another 20-foot jumper cable, and they're great. You just cut the alligator clips off them. They work good. Got my other side of my Anderson plug right here hooked up. It goes underneath the trailer and comes up underneath the trailer right here, right there, comes over, plugs into my DC charger. So it's a nice heavy duty cable. I know it looks heavy duty. If I were going just a few feet, I could have gotten away with a much shorter or much thinner wire, but because I had to go almost 40 feet, I needed 4 gauge. So that's why it's so heavy duty. All right, and then the way this charger is powered on, it's got a 12-volt signal wire that you have to plug into it, and that tells the charger when to turn on. And normally, if you're doing like a van or whatever, you could wire that to your auxiliary ignition switch, and then when you turn the key on, it would send that 12-volt signal and tell this to turn on. So you can do it that way. That's the way the instructions tell you to do it. Just find a power source that's only on when the ignition is on, and use that. What I didn't do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is a trailer, so the only time this is ever going to have power from the battery is when I'm connected to the truck. So I didn't really need to have something that was controlled by the ignition switch. At least, that's was my thinking. So I've got the 12-volt power that comes from the 7-pin on the truck, comes back here and is plugged into my little distribution box that goes out and does all the lighting and everything. So I just did my signal wire from there, the 7-pin, into here. And now on some vehicles, that 7-pin is actually hooked to the auxiliary power, and it's only on when the auxiliary's on. Unfortunately, in my truck, it's directly wired to the battery, so it's always on. So when I'm wired to the truck, it's going to turn this charger on. So I got to be careful because you can drain your battery. However, I have another little trick, and I saw this online. There are a lot of people, instead of hooking the signal wire to the auxiliary the ignition switch, they just wire it straight to the battery, and then they put a little manual switch right there. Put a little manual switch on it, and then you have that, if you're in a van, you just put that on your dash, and when you want to charge your battery while you're driving, you flip it on. You do have to remember to turn it off, though, because otherwise you can drain your battery, like you say. But I like that idea, so I incorporated it also in the trailer. That way, if I stay connected to the truck, I can come back here and flip off the power, and that'll turn off the charger. It also gives me the ability to turn it off if I just don't want to charge for some odd reason. So I went ahead and used that, and that's how I wired up the signal wire for the DC to DC charger. So that takes care of charging while I'm driving. All right, one more thing. So with the AGM battery, when I was parked at the house or whatever, and I needed to charge my battery, or if I was happened to be someplace where I had shore power, I was just using a regular garage charger. Of course, if you're going to do that, you got to make sure that charger will charge a lithium battery. I decided instead, when I switched over, I decided I wanted an actual shore power plug. So I went with the Noco Genius. I think it's 10 amp, I'm not sure, but it's a single I went with the single battery. They make multiple battery that'll charge multiple batteries. This one just charges one. This here is an onboard charger, so it's permanently connected to the battery. It's a pretty smart charger. It does lithium. I've got it set up to charge a lithium battery. And to get my power into it, I'm just using a shore power plug. So this here is, it's just a regular 15 amp plug. So I can plug, I've got an extension cord. You just plug my extension cord in there and plug it into any shore power, 120 volt standard shore power. I didn't need a 30 amp RV outlet. You know, most RVs have a 30 amp plug, so you can get 30 amps into the RV. I didn't need that. Everything in the trailer is 12 volt. I've got a 12 volt refrigerator. All the lighting's 12 volt. My inverter is just 500 watts. So really, the only thing the shore power is used for is to charge the battery with my onboard battery charger. Now, I am going to add a power strip plugged into the shore power also. So when I am plugged into shore power, I can plug in, you know, my laptop, or maybe a I don't know, coffee maker, if I wanted a coffee maker instead of having to make my coffee on a propane stove. You know, whatever. But I'd never have more power than just your basic 120 volt appliances that you can plug in. So that pretty much covers all the electrical that I went with this. It's been working out really good. The only other thing, and one of the main reasons I went to a lithium battery, is because I've got the refrigerator, I've got a max air fan that I want to be able to use a long time in the summer. But then the other thing I have is I've got a diesel heater, which uses a little bit of power. So I was always a little bit concerned with running out of power when I was out camping. So this should solve my problem, or my concerns. I never did run out of power. So anyway, stay tuned for the next video. I'm going to go over how I did these windows. I didn't use the trim ring on the inside, and there have been a lot of questions on the internet asking how people do that, and I will show you that in the next video. So stay tuned. Till then, talk to you later. Oh wait, I never had it going. I didn't have it going.